everybody, and welcome back to another edition of This Week in Cleantech, your favorite 15-minute roundup of some of the biggest stories in climate and clean energy each week. We're recording the show for Tuesday, May 26th, 2026, taking a bit of a breather for the Memorial Day holiday. We've got a returning guest in waiting. Akshat Rathi from Bloomberg News is waiting to join the program. If you don't know my voice or face by now, I'm Factor This content director Paul Gerke, joined as always by Cleantech commentator Mike Casey of Tigercomm. Mike, thank you for holding down the fort for me last week. I don't think I've ever been that sick in my life. My daughter continues to bring home contagion from daycare. This time it really got me, and the wife and I were a little concerned, but hey, we're back. We got a dress shirt on. We're doing the program. Thanks for holding it down for me, though. Yeah,
I have been there, my friend, and we missed you, bud, but really glad you're back and safe. I want to give a listener shout out to Renewcom president and founder Peter Kelly. He also happens to be a very close friend of mine, but he had some input into a story idea, and we just want to give him some acknowledgement. Paul.
Shout out to Peter. Tip of the hat to you. If you guys want to shout out on the show, or you have something that you think we should talk about, 2 cents to spare, you could just email us. We've got our own account set up. It's TWIC This Week in Cleantech at Tigercomm with 2Ms.us. We've got 5 stories to talk about this week. Let's start with the first one, Mike.
Yeah, and there are 5 really good ones. I'll tell you, this was a super heavy news week in the industry. So first, it's Coco Liu and Lily Pike from Bloomberg. China's $3 billion U.S. cleantech exit is an investment warning.
Yeah, so Jinko Solar, you might be familiar with, major solar manufacturer, recently sold a 75% stake in its Florida facility to a private equity fund. The risk here is complying with U.S. manufacturing regulations and minimizing operational risks posed by FEOC or the non-PFE requirements in the Big Beautiful Bill. The retreat here follows a boom period when Biden-era tax credits in the IRA attracted more than $5 billion in announced Chinese cleantech investments just in 2023, incentives that have since been rolled back under the Trump administration. Chinese cleantech companies scraped roughly $2.8 billion in planned manufacturing projects, scrapped them rather in 2025. That was last year, with more than half of all proposed Chinese cleantech investments since 2022 either canceled, paused, or delayed. A driver in the 2025 tax bill's new restrictions on manufacturers tied to those FEOC, the foreign entity of concern, which creates significant compliance hurdles for Chinese-owned facilities as well as equipment, depending on the tax credit you're trying to take advantage of. Mike, your thoughts here?
Okay, so losing access to tax credits puts Chinese-owned factories at a major competitive disadvantage. For contrast, U.S.-based First Solar expects to receive over $2 billion in credits this year alone. Now, this is, of course, a pittance compared to the hundreds of billions of dollars that our politicians are shoveling at the U.S. fracking industry each year. So specific Treasury Department guidance on ownership thresholds for tax credit eligibility have not been issued yet. But analysts expect the conditions to be very difficult for China-linked firms to meet, despite Trump's occasional openness to China investment in his recent trip. Analysts say there's little appetite within this administration to create space for it in cleantech because, well, they're governing like the National Convention of Village Idiots. The tightening policy environment means even Trump's meeting this week with President Xi in Beijing was unlikely to spark a new Chinese cleantech investment in the U.S. anytime soon because we don't want those jobs here, Paul.
Well, Mike, I was talking to somebody that's really well connected in the solar and storage space yesterday, and we didn't talk specifically about the Jinko Solar ownership transfer deal that went through, but he said that he expects to see a lot more of this. It's a really messy process, though, that's going to take years to iron out to get rid of the plausible deniability of Chinese ownership in a lot of these supply chains, and it's just a messy situation right now, Mike. There's more news on this to come for sure. Second story this week by Keith Lang from USA Today. It's titled, "Paying Their Fair Share, EV Drivers Could See New Fees in Proposed Bill." What are they talking about, Mike?
I want to make sure we're clear. Paying their fair share is in air quotes in this story, in this headline, because a group of leaders, we'll call them that, the U.S. House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, is pushing for a new annual fee for EV owners. You know why? Because they're stupid too. Because who wants to have an auto industry of the future when you can trade yours away today? The proposed fee included in the bipartisan Build America 250 Act would start at $135 annually in October 2026 and rise by $5 each year up to $150. So plug-in hybrid owners would face a smaller fee starting at $35, maxing out at $50 by 2031. Yes, I know everyone needs to contribute to roads here, but we got to put our big kid pants on and think about the future. What kind of economy do we want to have? Paul, we are deciding that now, but your thoughts, my friend.
This doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand this at all. Where's this fee going? Roads just ambiguously? Like, wait, I pay taxes already. What happened to all that money for the roads and the chargers and the infrastructure?
Ballroom.
Yeah, federal government. Yeah, I heard what you said there. Federal government's charging more than 18 cents per gallon on gasoline that funds road and transit projects. And then states often have their own fees that they tack on top of that. The federal gas tax hasn't been raised since 1993, pulls in about $40 billion a year. That's short of the roughly $60 billion the government typically spends to maintain the country's roads and transit systems. Infrastructure advocates, wonder who those folks are, say that this is barely enough to even maintain the nation's road and transit systems. I would agree. I would say the roads in most parts of the country need some work. EV drivers have traditionally avoided paying anything into the federal government's road fund. This fee intended to ensure that EV owners, quote, pay their fair share for the use of our roads. I couldn't disagree more with the idea here. I think EVs tax the roads an awful lot less than gas vehicles. And I think the lack of pollution, I think that covers the $35. But whatever, man. We can't linger for too long here. Let's get to story number 3.
Our third story, Ben Storrow from E&E News. It's called "A New Mega Utility is at Ground Zero for AI. Here's what could happen." This is otherwise known as "I'm going to have a new utility."
Yeah, this is a big story.
In Virginia.
Yeah, the NextEra stuff this week. It's not NextEra's first attempt to create a larger version of itself, but PJM is tip of the spear right now for everything, Mike. So this is going to get interesting. We're talking about energy giant NextEra. In March, they plan to construct 2 large natural gas plants in Pennsylvania and Texas as part of a $550 billion trade deal with Japan. Yet, even while embracing Trump's push for expanded gas production, NextEra executives told financial analysts they think renewables and batteries are still the fastest path to meeting surging energy demand from data centers. And you may have heard about NextEra's proposed $67 billion merger with Virginia-based Dominion Energy. That would create the largest regulated utility in the world, put those two competing energy strategies to the test. That merger would create a utility giant. It rivals some of the nation's biggest oil companies by market value. It would also hand NextEra a stake in one of the country's hottest data center markets. It would also put the company in charge of America's largest offshore wind project. Mike, there's a lot to this. I'm not sure the deal is going to get approved. There's a lot of snags along the way. I don't even know if it's the best thing, but there's a lot to say about it. I'm sure. Your thoughts on the matter?
Yeah, my home state of Virginia, it's home to the world's largest concentration of data centers, making the merger a high-stakes bet on how to power the AI boom. Analysts say the deal could modernize the grid, ease rising utility bills, and accelerate the clean energy transition. So Dominion, my utility, has historically been slow to adopt new technology, hampering its ability to meet data center demand. NextEra, on the other hand, has a very strong track record of renewables and storage that could change that. Analysts say battery storage may be NextEra's best path to winning Virginia over, especially since a state law requires Dominion to secure 20 gigawatts of storage by 2045. So federal approval is said to look smooth, but in Virginia, where Dominion wields deep political influence, local leaders may resist handing control to an outside company. My friend, our fourth story.
Story 4 this week from Benoit Morin from the Wall Street Journal, titled "The World Can't Get Enough U.S. Energy, Keeping Prices High for Americans." What's in it, Mike?
Yeah. So Trump's effort to contain American energy prices, combined with the country's huge surplus, have prompted overseas buyers to purchase large volumes of U.S. oil, gasoline, and jet fuel that they aren't getting from the Middle East. For now, the U.S. has been able to meet domestic needs while filling some of that gap left by missing Gulf barrels, shipping 14.2 million barrels of crude and refined products a day last month, a level no country has ever reached, but producers are barely increasing output. Refineries are already operating at capacity, and domestic stocks are depleting fast, meaning American consumers are likely to keep paying more for fuel to stay inside U.S. borders. Paul?
Yeah, and the thought here is that the U.S. is exporting its way into a bit of a bind, and until domestic prices rise enough to discourage foreign buying, Americans are just going to continue to fork over cash. The administration has ruled out banning energy exports. They've taken some steps to tamp down rising prices, including waiving restrictions on trade between U.S. ports and releasing some oil from strategic stockpiles. We'll see where this goes, Mike. It was a heavy swallow for me filling up the Nissan Rogue the other day. I'll tell you that much. But I digress. We've got a guest in waiting.
Not only does he have cool glasses, but he makes British politicians very mad. So I want to see if he's going to make you mad, Paul Gerke. But we're welcoming back Akshat Rathi, our friend from Bloomberg. He has been on a tear of really cool podcast episodes. I actually had a hard time picking this one, but I love this one. Zero, Iran energy boosts wars, clean energy security benefits. All right. Akshat, welcome back.
Hey,
I really
nice
want
to be
people
here.
to listen to this show. But if they haven't yet, what was your biggest takeaway in talking to this guest?
Well, Professor Emily Grubert at the University of Notre Dame has a theory, which is that we are all kind of in what she calls the mid-transition. This is the period where both energy systems, the fossil fuel energy system and the clean energy system, simultaneously run. And that means two things. One, it will be more expensive because you are maintaining the old system while you're building the new system. And two, it is really politically fraught because, as you know, and as many of my British politician guests on the show have made it clear, it's a really great attack line because you can just say, oh, look, this renewable stuff, you say it's cheap, but it's not. Look at the energy costs. Look at the bills that we are paying. This is why we must stop clean energy deployment and go back to the 80s and 90s when Britain had fossil fuels and try and drill more if you can find it anywhere. Here in the North Sea, in America, things are different. You do still have plenty.
What is the temperature in the room like for renewable development in the UK, or I guess in Europe in general right now? I mean, we read about it, but I think that Mike and I are way more exposed to the hot coals of the political climate in the US than we are with what's happening over there. In fact, if anything, we look across the ocean and see a lot of offshore wind development and a lot of distributed energy resources being deployed. And it seems like you guys are 10 years ahead of we are with the grid transition stuff, but maybe it just feels that way from being over here in the US. What's the transition really like over there, Akshat?
Oh, no.
Sorry.
It's real. You guys are far behind. And let me tell you, it's...
Yeah! Just sounded like it is.
See, he's trying to make you cry, Paul.
No, yeah. I'm just going to agree with him.
The fact of the matter, though, is that Europe is, 27 countries in the EU and then 28th country, UK, very different politically. So things can be different in different countries. But let me just give you a little historical perspective that puts it in context, which is when the last energy crisis happened, only 4 years ago when Russia attacked Ukraine, there was a huge deployment of renewables and batteries that happened across European countries. And the countries that did the most amount of deployment are today seeing lower electricity prices, even as there is an energy shock playing out. In Spain, for example, gas in 2021 used to set the price of electricity something like 65% of the time. In the first quarter of this year, it was 9% of the time. So you're suddenly getting, Spain now has the cheapest electricity you can get anywhere in Europe. But things are complicated because last time around when there was an energy crisis, Germany, for example, had the Green Party in a coalition with the left-leaning party. This time, it's the conservatives who are in power, and they're actually not doing as much on clean energy because they're trying to keep this far-right party called AfD out of power. Here in the UK, we do have a left-leaning party, and it is doing a lot to try and get to clean energy by 2030. They have a goal to reach 95% clean power by 2030. But we also have a right-wing party in Reform that is getting a lot of movement. So they are not being as loud about their clean energy deployment as they would have been otherwise. But in terms of actual deployment, things are going forward quite a lot.
Akshat, do you see people in the UK or in the EU, for that matter, who are in public life, who are doing things for the energy transition who are effectively selling the benefits to consumers? Because you could count on one hand the number of people here in public life over the last 10 years who are advocates and are good salespeople for what they're advocating. Any different over there?
Well, I will say no, not here in the UK, and it is because the reality is not helping them. The reality is that the UK's electricity prices are among the highest in Europe. And for the clean energy transition to actually get to a price point where it will show in energy bills to be lower and cheaper, it is going to take some time. So even as the politicians try, the reality is that they have to explain, well, the bills will go higher for a little bit before they come down, and that is not a message that lands. In Spain, things are different. Where electricity prices have fallen and they have seen the benefit, those politicians are out and proud and are able to stand on that. So I think it is the reality of the messaging that needs to match up. And politicians have to be honest. Otherwise, people who can use disinformation to their benefit will take advantage.
I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here, Akshat, but is there a takeaway that Americans and North Americans listening to this show can sort of take away from the frustrations that the UK and Europe have encountered that we are in line for at the moment or trying to figure out on our own? Is there something we can really learn from the experience, the mid-transition across the pond?
I think you're starting to see a flavor of this already play out, right? Electricity prices in the US have gone up at the fastest rate in decades over the past couple of years. And there are politicians who are saying, oh, no, it's not the data centers. Don't worry about the data centers. We're going to get them to pay for all this. And so it's not going to show up on you. That is not true. I think you need to be upfront and honest with your citizens and your bill payers that, look, this stuff may be really good for you in the long term because it's going to bring money to this region, may not bring jobs, but initially some jobs, but it will also raise electricity prices. We're going to try and do as much as possible to lower those electricity prices. But sadly, they can't say that, right? Because they're also banning all sorts of renewables, which really could lower the prices.
Yeah, it's amazing. Hey, Paul, I could talk to this guy all day long, especially after this episode, because I thought it was so awesome. But we got to go to our Cleantecher of the Week.
Yeah, go watch the full podcast. Give it a listen if you like. We strongly recommend you do that. In the meantime, though, as Mike said, Cleantecher of the Week this week. Shout out to a life and a career that has left an indelible mark on the clean energy community. Jake Clark is our Cleantecher of the Week. He spent his career at Encore Renewable Energy, most recently pivoting from vice president of project development to stand up the company's community engagement program. Those who knew him describe him as one of those rare people who made the whole field better through his work and who he was. The clean energy community is a little smaller without him. We honor the memory of Jake Clark and the standard he set for all of us, our Cleantecher of the Week.
Yeah, Jake was in one of our trainings. I got to say, just an absolutely lovely guy. We are very sad about his passing, and we extend our best wishes for peace and serenity in this time to his family and coworkers. I want to give a shout out to our terrific producer, Brian Mendez, and to Alex Peterson and Claire Quirin for helping us identify this week's top stories.
And one last warm thank you to Akshat Rathi for joining this week's episode, as well as to you, the listener, for checking out This Week in Clean Tech. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please subscribe, leave a little feedback, or share a story suggestion. We read everything you send our way. You can also check out the articles we discussed this week, plus the podcast from our special guest. They're in links in the episode description, as well as in the post where this lives on factorthis.com. Until next time, people, be good.